Hi. Back when I was in college, I acquired a bass guitar. Doesn't matter how, and nobody remembers how it happened anyway. The thing is, it was free, so yay, free bass guitar. And really up until fairly recently, I always believed it to be kind of a mishmash of different guitar parts. The neck never seemed to really kind of go with the body. It just wasn't as elegant. The bridge clearly wasn't original. Nonetheless, it played well. It was easy to play, and it was fun. And so I kind of held on to it and carried it around with me through college. And it actually was used on the first 4 or 5 albums that I produced. It's had a neat sound. I don't know why I'm talking about it in the past tense. It's still here. But round about the early 2000s, I realized that it was kind of pulling itself apart under tension, and I thought, I really need to kind of take this apart for now and, get it fixed later. That time is now. I'm gonna fix it. But I know more about the guitar now. It wasn't a Franken bass at all. Quite frankly, most of the parts actually were and are original. What I have here is a Coral FB2B4 Fiddle bass. They were manufactured by the Dan Electro Company between 1967 and 1969, so it's fairly rare, as all Corals are. I believe it was made in a Japanese factory, so the craftsmanship was actually pretty good. There were some design flaws, which we'll talk about later. So that's the history of the guitar. Let's take a look specifically at the pieces that I have, and then we'll maybe put together a plan to how to make this thing usable again and not self-destructive. Okay, let's talk about the body first. This thing, it's pretty cool. I've read on a Japanese site some specs on this. They say it's supposed to have an arched spruce top, maple backs and sides, nice flame maple, actually. It's laminated spruce and maple, like flute ply. I don't know if you can see it. So there's that. It had a shoulder block, which has come loose. That's part of the problem. A tail block at the end, a slot through which the electronics were fed and attached and everything, and lipstick tube pickups. Some examples here. Classic Dan Electro type of thing. Let's see what else we got here. The bridge was held together, or held together with the tailpiece, which went on the back here. And the only thing missing from this is a large plate, with a stylized letter C on it, that's sort of the nameplate of the guitar. This would have had just underneath the bridge pickup a floating bridge, probably made of rosewood, maybe with a brass saddle in it, and it would have had like maybe 3 screws that you could make adjustments to it. That is, well, it's long gone. What I have instead is this thing, Precision Style 4-saddle bass bridge. And whoever had this before me had the tailpiece and the bridge propped up with a bunch of pieces of brass and stuff. So, not original. Not original. I think I talked about the pickups. This is the entire control harness, which was slipped inside here and attached to these. The knobs are not original. They're good enough for me. I'm not going to replace them or anything. But the entire control harness is sealed in a copper pouch. Boop, 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 boop. And this is how I was able to date this guitar. I suspect it's from either late 1967 or early 1968, and the reason is because of the control pots. I don't know if you can see, boop, 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 this. but there's a number on there, 6740. Typically that means the 40th week of 1967. The two tone pots say the 42nd week of 67. But yeah, you can see it's got like a, I guess this is a tone capacitor, another capacitor here, and a resistor. I don't see resistors in a lot of setups. I had thought maybe the resistor and the capacitor sort of served as a treble bleed circuit. I don't know that that's true. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just going to sort of resolder everything, and I think it'll be fine. Switch is good. Well, not the covering of the switch. It's kind of beaten up. And the jack is kind of sealed in this thing, and I have no reason to pry into what's up with that. It works fine. Let's see what else we got here. This is something that I haven't seen in any of the literature, but I think it's kind of a neat feature. You see, the neck was held on with a triangular plate with 3 screws. Somebody at some point put in a 4th screw, and the plate is no longer here. But there's this extra little hole here, which appears to adjust some sort of neck tilt adjustment screw. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it actually, with a 5/32 Allen wrench, you can actually move this thing up and down. And on the neck, there's this little piece of metal, which that's what rested against that screw. So you could actually kind of shift the neck around, which is, I mean, they don't talk about it in the literature. I just sort of saw that and I'm like, I wonder if that's a neck tilt adjustment. It was. Let's see, where are we at? Let's talk about the neck. Very, very low frets. They may have been low when this thing was created. I suspect that's the case because I don't see any divots from play. I mean, there's a few up near the top, but they're all just very low. Not just low, but wide, which could pose an intonation problem. I never had tremendous problems with intonation. You know, part of the reason I didn't think this was the real original neck, I mean, it's made of mahogany. It's good. I mean, it's non-adjustable. It's got a couple support pieces of metal in it, so it's, you know, it's a solid neck. But the fretboard, it's not ebony. It's almost definitely not rosewood, and it's got these weird kind of inconsistencies. Not what I would normally see a fretboard made out of. It's bound on the sides with something, might be walnut, I guess. There's a scarf joint at the top, but not just a regular scarf joint, a scarf joint that actually goes kind of up into the headstock. You can see where I dropped this bass upside down on its headstock on the ground, and a friend of mine helped me kind of put it back together. I'm not worried about that holding together. It's held together really well. We've got the original tuners here, just, you know, basic old tuners. This coral nameplate there, which broke too, but it's fine. This, like all corals, has a brass nut, and that's what makes me think the saddle was probably brass as well. The frets, probably not pure brass, but some sort of alloy. It's not your standard nickel steel silver mixture. So that's the situation. Now let's talk about where to start and what to do. I'd be happy to get your comments down below as I jump into this process. Okay, here's our body. Pretty nice. It's a 5-ply binding. Overall, it's in pretty good shape. There's sort of a hairline crack just on the top layer of laminate there, a few more here. I'm not really worried about them. They're, you know, things happen. You know, temperature fluctuations, humidity. There's another wider crack on the back here, which I'm also not worried about because it appears to just be along the top layer of a 3-ply laminate. Missing some binding there, so I'll have to deal with that. The big challenge with this, I'm just going to go from tail of the guitar up and talk about my challenges here, is this shoulder block. I understand this is a weakness with these models in that they just didn't have much glue surface area to adhere to the body with, and therefore, you know, there was a tendency with these things to just sort of kind of, you know, come loose, come apart. So clearly, I've got to. Oh, and by the way, you'll notice I'm missing actually part of the body. That broke away in the last thing, and I just completely lost it. I'll show you this other problem too. You can see where the back of the guitar actually started to warp away, so there's some damage to the binding there too. I figure if I can re-glue the sides and glue the back of the shoulder block to the back of the guitar, that's going to help. But I'm not going to stop there, because I think what this guitar really needs is some sort of a more rigid actual backbone. So what I'm thinking of doing, and again, call me on this if you think I'm crazy, I'd like to take a hardwood dowel, probably a maple dowel, go through the underside of this, and just sort of use it to jam the shoulder up against the tailpiece. And you know, I would take like a dowel and sort of angle the sides a little bit so I could just shove it in and just it would just like kind of push against that. That's my hope. It seems to me that what would really help is to from tailpiece to nut to establish some sort of rigid, you know, and continuous backbone. It's not for sustain. It's just for you know, stability mainly. Tailpiece, obviously, I can use, and although I would like to have the plate there, I'm not seeing any examples on the internet of people. I just think it's such a rare guitar that I'm not going to have any luck finding that. But I do need to get a suitable replacement for the bridge. Now, I've seen photos of other examples of this guitar, a few. One of which uses a Hofner fiddle bass style bridge. It probably was from the Hofner. They still sell them. They still make them. They're similar style, but instead of one solid piece of saddle, it's like 4 different pieces of saddle that are staggered. So it's probably better for intonation. It's not made of brass. It's probably bone or maybe a hard plastic of some sort. But I'm not worried about that. I don't need more sustain on this guitar. It's a hollow body guitar. It's meant to sound really mellow. And it does. So that's probably what I'm going to do with that. And obviously, I'm not going to use these pieces anymore. This is interesting. It looks like at one point somebody had tried to use this as a saddle. I mean, it's got different sized string paths in it. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to keep it just for the curiosity of it. So that's the big challenge, is this whole thing. And then, of course, I'll need to replace with some sort of laminate the part that's missing here. And hopefully I can find a matching 5-ply piece of binding to just sort of, get in there and replace, sort of cut it off and just sort of join there. Electronics. Again, this thing was working fine at the time that I pulled it apart, although you'll see that I have one of my pickups taken apart. Now this came disconnected, so I was going to pull it off anyway, but one of the lipstick pickup covers, actually, you see that it's got a It's got a split down the middle. Recent video by Brad, the guitarologist down in Louisville. His Dan Electro had the same problem. He was able to acquire some replacement pickup covers from this guy, but I understand that was sort of a special case. I'm inclined to just buy a new pickup and attach it to the original mounting hardware, which I still have. And that should be fine. I just think this is so cool. Nothing wrong with the electronics. I'm just going to get in there, reflow the solder, make sure all the grounds are tight, maybe put some heat shrink wrapping on some of these exposed wires, and I think it'll be fine. Seal it back up. I've got some extra copper foil to sort of seal up any edges, but really, shielding was never a problem on this guitar, so I'm not anticipating that being a big deal. Okay, the neck. Let's take a look at this, a closer look at these frets here. Yeah, they're really low. I mean, talk about a fretless wonder. I'm not up for a refret. That's not happening. What I believe I might be able to do, though, is perhaps do some fret dressing, actually reestablish a crown, doink, with my fret dressing file, actually reestablish a single point of contact along the top of each fret. I know that I don't have a whole lot of fret to work with, but I still think it's worth trying, because you know, a well-in-tuned guitar is a happy guitar and a happy player. Okay, let's see what else we got here. The brass nut. Okay, this I'm kind of worried about. Look at how low somebody has filed these nut slots down to. I mean, that is like, that's really not very far from the fretboard. Maybe they figured they had to do that to get the action they wanted, but if that's what they did not use the proper file. They used a square or a flat file to do it. So these aren't rounded. They're really kind of crappy. I don't know where I'm going to find another brass nut. I probably could. So that's something I'm considering replacing. And then just reshaping and putting in some new slots. I think it would be worthwhile. Tuners, I said they're fine. I mean, they're kind of bent up in some places. I think this one is probably the most clear example of that. But they're good. They're original. I'm not inclined to change anything. I might try to clean them up, obviously, lubricate them. But they're open gear tuners, so that's not that hard to do. So that's what's going on with this guitar. Can't wait to get started. Are you kidding? I am terrified to get started. I don't want to screw this up. But I feel capable of doing it, and you know, that's kind of my ethos. I don't like to accept help. I don't like to pay for help, let's be honest. And I sort of feel like I'm more likely to cherish this and make the most out of it if I've got, you know, some sweat invested into it. So keep watching. I hope you enjoy what you see. I hope you're not too put off by some of the decisions I make. Please post comments. I'd like to hear what you think of how this process goes, or even some of the things I talk about doing. I'm really looking forward to doing this. I really am. Anyway, like me, subscribe, and we'll see you down here at the bench later on.